Learn to tile with Mary. Today we're putting tile on these walls. First we gotta put water in the bucket to put in the saw. I'm making all the small cuts first for the bottom of the wall. And then I'm gonna start making some thin set so I can just have it ready for when we go on inside. This is lightweight thin set, which I actually tried for the first time on this job, and I'm a pretty big fan of it. Then I spread the thin set on the walls with a notch trowel. I do use a regular trowel to put it on the notch trowel because it's just easier for me that way. And I spread it on the wall, which takes me a second, obviously. And then we'll be ready to set our tiles. These are all the smaller pieces that I cut at the saw and had ready, so I'm laying those out first before I start stacking other tiles on top of them. Now you'll notice that I adjust the spacers, and I don't use spacers on all of these because these are handmade ceramic tiles and they have wavy lines, so I want the joints to match up. And if I use spacers on each one that doesn't line up, they would have big gaps and just not line up correctly with the other tiles, and we don't want that. So I just kind of have to make sure the pattern works and then put spacers when I have to. I know some people will probably disagree with me on this, but handmade tiles can be a little more difficult to work with, and you don't want wavy lines or mismatched and all kinds of cuts on the end. So that's just how I prefer to do it. Then I move on to the next section, back buttering the wall. I only do one section at a time because the thin set can dry out, and you don't want that. If the thin set's too dry, the tiles won't connect to it correctly and they could fall off. And it's just not something you want to deal with, having to scrape it all off and redo it. So I just suggest doing a section at a time, unless you have more than one person with you and you can wipe it out faster. You can see I'm eyeballing the joints to make sure everything is lined up so it just looks correct and well put together. I also would suggest not making too much thin set at once if you're just one person, because I'm a little more meticulous, I guess, and take my time, so I don't want it to dry up on me. Now I'm making the measurements for the cuts at the end of the wall, and I will mark them on the tile because that part is getting trimmed off by the wet saw outside. And I'm making the cuts, and I'm coming back to finish the rest of the back wall. This part got a little bit difficult because I had to pull out some of the things for the plumbing in the back and measure to make cuts around it for the ring back there. But I did make it work, and I got the cuts. So you'll see I'm laying them all back here, and I went around the toilet first, so it made everything else go by a little more fast. I back buttered a lot of these individually because it was just a little easier for me to work with without getting it all over the wall back there behind the toilet and around it. And I just kind of kept going with that until I got higher up on the wall. Disclaimer, be careful with horseshoe spacers because ripping them out without my gloves on, you can see I cut my hand twice. Here I'm putting up the pencil tiles, which went by pretty quickly, and then it is time to grout. I do tend to use a lot of grout on the wall at once just to make that go by a little bit faster, but I know everybody has different ways of grouting, and really you can't go wrong as long as you're filling in the joints correctly. And make sure that you do sponge it all off. You don't want any haze left over on the tiles because it's just not aesthetically pleasing. Also make sure you really do check all your joints and that you filled in every nook and cranny because that is important before you start the sponging process. I like to go over sponging 2 to 3 times so there's no leftover haze. I clipped it all together so you didn't really see the whole process of that, but you see the end product, which is haze-free. Also, definitely make sure you change out your water bucket each time you wipe it down 2 to 3 times so it's clean water. This is the end result. They're beautiful emerald ceramic tiles, and you can see those pencil tiles on the top. This is a unique tile choice, and I'm glad because I think it's beautiful. So thanks for joining me today, y'all.